All right, it is 6:31, so we are going to go ahead and get started. So hello and welcome to Cricut Design Space Basics. My name is Nikki, and I am a library instructor and research specialist with the Plano Public Library, and I will be presenting today's program. Tonight, I am also assisted by Megan, who will be monitoring the chat for the program. Megan, would you mind saying hi?
Hello.
Thank you. Before we begin, I do need to let you know about some ground rules that we have set up for the program. So you will be muted during the class, and we do have your video blocked. You will only see my screen today. At the top of your screen, you can find an exit full screen option if you need to get to other things on your computer, including if you plan on following along in the Cricut Design Space software today. You are welcome to ask questions or request that I repeat any information at any time during today's program. You should see an icon at the bottom of your screen that says chat. You can click on that to open the chat window, and this chat is set to be seen by library staff only. Please do note that any inappropriate comments will cause your immediate removal from the class. If you prefer, you can also use the Q&A feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen as well, to ask questions. For all questions, we may answer you directly, hold the question until a break or until the end of class, or if it's pressing, we'll answer it at the time that you submit your question. A recording of today's class will be available in a few days on the Plano Public Library YouTube page. So if you'd like to watch today's class and practice with the recording later, that is totally an option. If you would like to follow along in the Cricut Design Space software, if you have it downloaded on your computer, you may, but do please keep in mind that it will be difficult for us to give one-on-one assistance or troubleshoot anything you might run into with your software, but we will try to take it slowly in case you are practicing along with us. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So this is today's agenda. We will be reviewing just some basic information about the Cricut machine before we hop into Design Space. We will talk about the workspace overview and the edit and toolbars. And we do also have a handout for today's program because we have a couple of class projects that we are going to be doing together. Megan is going to go ahead and share that handout in the chat, and you're welcome to download it and then follow along with us either now or in the future. And then at the very end, we'll share some additional library resources you have access to in regards to learning more about the Cricut and what you can accomplish with it. All right, before we jump into today's program, I do want to quickly share and make it clear that I am not a Cricut machine expert. The purpose of today's program is to provide a tutorial for the basics of using the Design Space software in which you can create a variety of projects with the Cricut machine. So this class today is not going to guarantee that you'll be an expert with the Cricut machine software, but the goal is really just to ensure that you're a little more informed and have some more tools in your arsenal to continue in your maker journey. For more Cricut expertise, we do recommend connecting with our other Plano Public Library resources, such as LinkedIn Learning or Udemy for tutorials, which Megan is also going to drop some links directly to those sites into the chat for you. And additionally, you can check out the Plano Public Library YouTube channel for past programs we have done on the Cricut, and we have a ton of other technology-related programs on there as well. You are also welcome to set up a book a librarian appointment for more one-on-one assistance with your project. And we'll drop a link to that appointment form as well. And you can also make a reservation at one of our digital creation spaces. So we have 3 digital creation spaces at the library, one at Harrington, one at Haggard, and one at Parr. And in each of these spaces, you have access to a Cricut machine. So if you'd like to get some hands-on experience with a Cricut machine, you can make a reservation, and we'll share the link for that as well. All right, so what is a Cricut machine? A Cricut machine is an electric smart cutting machine that is programmed to cut, draw, or personalize material under 3 millimeters of thickness using vector-based designs. It is also known as a cutting plotter, a smart die cut machine, or even an automatic cutting machine. It was first introduced by Provo Craft in 2005 with their very first Cricut model, which was called the CRV001, or a personal machine, that was later upgraded to the Expression model that same year. Since then, there have been 6 new models introduced in their product lineup that are capable of cutting, drawing, embossing, debossing, and more. Their capability has been expanded to cutting over 300 plus kinds of materials, which is kind of crazy. So you can do quite a bit with the Cricut machine. And if you do plan on coming into the library to use one of our Cricut machines, you're going to find we have either the Cricut Maker Model 1 or 3, depending on which location you're at. And the machine itself does require certain accessories to function. So depending on what you're going to be doing, you will need a blade or a tool. And these are pieces that you have access to at the library. So we have the different kinds of blades you might need, but there are 19 different kinds of blade attachments. We don't have all 19 blade attachments here at the library. We have some of the basic ones, but depending on what you're wanting to accomplish, you might want to bring your own blade attachments. You also need a machine mat. This is what you're going to put your material on, and it will then run through the Cricut to be cut. Different colors of the mat indicate the different levels of adhesive. So the most common mats are going to be the green mat, which is just a normal level of adhesion, and then the light blue mat, which has a very light adhesion. So if you're using like a thinner paper, it's better to use a mat with a lighter adhesion. And then also pens and markers. It is important to note that the pen adapter tool is sized to Cricut brand specific pens, so you can't just put whatever pen you would like into the pen adapter. But Cricut does offer fine point pens, gel pens, glitter pens, markers, even watercolor markers. So there's a lot of options for you if you're wanting to use this for the pen and marker feature. All right, so what is design space, which is what our program today is really all about. We're not really going to delve too much further into the machine itself. We're going to be talking all about design space. So design space is the design software made exclusively for the Cricut smart cutting machines. It does come with a premium software subscription called Cricut Access. And when we hop into the software today, I'll show you how you can tell when things are a Cricut Access level of subscription, but basically anything that has a little green flag with a white A is part of that subscription. And sometimes this can be a template or an image, and it may temporarily be free or it will come attached with a cost unless you have this Cricut Access subscription. The software allows for the creation of basic vector designs for use in drawing, cutting, embossing, debossing, and more. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hop out of our PowerPoint and open up the Cricut Design Space. And we're going to take a quick tour through the welcome screen. And then we'll go ahead and create a new canvas together and talk about the workspace, the editing tools, before we move on to a couple of simple projects that we will be doing together. So let me exit out of my PowerPoint here, and I'm going to open up Cricut, which I do have it pre-opened. I had a little bit of a hard time earlier. It took forever to load, so I didn't want to have to sit here waiting for it to load. So typically when you're opening up Design Space for the first time, you'll come to a login screen. I have already done that. But once you log in, it's going to take you here to this screen. And this is called the Discover screen. And before we hop into creating a new canvas, I just kind of want to showcase what you have available on here. So they have a couple different bundle sales up here, how-to, tutorials, just some different links to things that you might be interested in. And then as we scroll down, it has some suggestions for images. So these are image files you might want to use in your project. Some of them are going to be free, but some of them might come associated with a cost unless you have that Cricut access that we talked about. So here you can see that little green A, and then up here, there's a button for start a free trial. I do not have Cricut access, so anything that has a cost associated with it, I would have to pay in order to download and use it. There is also this Projects for You panel, which is actually pretty cool. There are some templates for various different projects. So for example, here's one for a birthday card. If you click on it, it's going to give you a more detailed description about this template and what you can use it for. And again, there's usually a cost associated with it, or if you do have Cricut access, it may be free for you. Continuing to scroll down, they have this cool new at Cricut bar right here that has different new templates, but also different new tutorials. So if you are new to Cricut and Design Space, this is a really fun spot to explore. They talk about different things you can make and have kind of like mini micro learning sessions. So this is a really cool area to explore. And then as you scroll down, there's just more suggestions. Right now, back to school things are very popular. So there's lots of back to school graphics, varsity fonts, things like that. All right, looking to the left-hand side of the screen over here, underneath the Discover page, you'll find the My Stuff page, which I'm going to click on real quick. And as you start to use Cricut Design Space, you'll see all of your past projects pop up here. Now, this is my personal account, so you can see I've got some work things and some personal things on here, but these are all past projects that I have made. But let's go ahead and we are going to come to the top right-hand corner of our screen if you're following along in Design Space at home and click this New Project button. And we are going to just choose Blank Canvas, this last option here, so that we can go into our class project today. So this is the workspace and where we are going to be working on designs. If you're following along on the in the handout that Megan shared, you'll find this overview on the first page of that class handout. But starting from A, up here at the top, we have our menu bar. So we have a button for home, and if I clicked on that, that's going to take us back to that Discover page and My Stuff. We have our button for our canvas. And then continuing over to the right, we have these three little dots, which are going to give us a few more options like quitting Cricut or viewing. You might need to reload your page or force reload. Sometimes Cricut will get a little stuck and you might have to force reload it. It doesn't happen often though. There is a help button as well, along with a little notification bell. This is where you'll find more information about your account. So there is a drop down here and you can see your profile, your settings, report an issue, or sign out. And then we also have just the pretty standard minimize, maximize, and close out of the program option. I am going to quickly pop something onto our canvas so we actually get some of our editing tools popped up here. There we go. And so once something is on your canvas, you can see that brings up this edit bar up here at the top, which has a lot of different tools in it. I'm actually going to come back to this edit tool or this edit bar in just a moment. So we'll cover some of these in more detail in just a moment. Up above that edit bar, we do have our save button here, which I'm real quickly going to go ahead and click save. When you do this, it's going to allow you to name your project. So I'm going to go ahead and just name this class project for today. If you are working on a lot of different projects in Design Space, you might want to create collections to keep your projects organized. I'm going to go ahead and just keep this out of a collection for now and just go ahead and name it class project and press save. And we will see in just a moment, project has been saved. And once that little pop-up goes away, we can see up here on the left-hand side, our canvas is now named class project. There is also this My Stuff button, which if we click on that, that's going to take us back to the page that we were viewing before we created this canvas, where you could see past projects you have worked on, or if you've uploaded any special images or maybe vector images into the Design Space workspace. Next to that is going to be the machine selector. So you can work in Design Space without having a machine connected. For example, right now I am not connected to our machine at the library, but it is going to ask you what machine you're going to be using in the future. And it is important that you go ahead and click on this and choose which Cricut you will be using in the future, because they all have different capabilities. So for example, if I were to click on the Cricut Joy, that was a really quick change, but there was a create sticker option here that just went away because you can't do that with the Joy. If I switch back to the Maker, which is what we have here at the DCS, that create sticker option comes back up. So do make sure that you take a moment to set this to whichever Cricut machine you will be using later on. Next to that is going to be the Make button. And this button is going to be grayed out when there is no design on the canvas. Right now we do have a shape on there, so I could technically click this make button, but this is what you click at the end of your project once you're done and you're ready for the Cricut to cut out or use the pen tool to actually make the project that you have been working on. And then down here we have our layers panel, and there is both layers and color sync. So underneath layers, and I'll show you guys when we get into the class projects, but you'll see as things get dragged onto the canvas, we will have different layers appear here. And then there's options to group and ungroup, which again, right now I only have one thing on here. Once we have a couple different layers on here, I can show you guys those options. But here's where we can group things together. And just depending on what kind of project you're working on, grouping things might help you keep your space a little more organized over here. There's also this color sync panel, which allows for organizing line actions through color distinction. Um, so the best way for me to describe that, let me go ahead and actually pull a shape onto here too, another shape. So I'm going to pull another shape on here, and I'm going to go ahead and change the color of one of these to purple and one to black. And so an important thing to know about the Cricut is that it does not print. So when I'm changing this star here to the color purple, it's not going to print a purple star or cut a purple star. It depends on what material you are running through the Cricut. But the purpose of changing the color of these different shapes is if you're working on a very big project where you're maybe planning on using different kinds of material. So for example, let's say I might be using just a regular vinyl and I want that to be what this shape is cut out in. And then maybe I saw just the other day, they have a really cool new like flocked vinyl. So it has like a really interesting texture to it. And maybe that's what I want my star to be cut out in, but I want to work on them in the same canvas. Coloring them differently, when you go to click on this make button, is actually going to lay them down on different mats for you so that you would first load this mat with your regular vinyl and run it through. And then the second one, it would pause, give you time to reload your mat, and you could put your different material onto this one and then cut that out. So I'm going to go ahead and press cancel on that, but I just kind of wanted to explain that. I think it's kind of hard without that visual to really understand the purpose of changing the color of things on Cricut, since again, it does not print out images. Another reason why you might want to change a color though is just if you're working in the space and let's say we're going to add text to this octagon, and if it was black, we wouldn't be able to see it. So we would be able to change the color just so we can see our designs better if needed. And I'll show that with one of our projects that we'll be doing in just a moment as well. Okay, down here is the toolbar, and we're going to review that in just a moment as well. I completely forgot to mention this in the middle, the most important spot is our canvas. So this is really where we do all of our designing in, and it does measure in 1-inch blocks. So this 0 to 1, 1 to 2, these are 1-inch blocks. So if I were to cut this out, we can see it's about, well, it's going to tell us here as well, but about 3.33 inches wide by 3.33 inches tall. And then over here on the left-hand side is our design panel. So this is where you're going to find options for creating a new project. You can add images or access templates that are available within Cricut, shapes. This just recently popped up, which is interesting. It looks like some templates for monograms, which are really popular, especially going back to school. So they've got some templates here that you can use if you're wanting to like cut out some monograms to put onto maybe your kid's backpack or water bottle or something like that. And then there is also an upload button here where you can upload an image. And that is something you would do actually for multiple reasons. You can do it if you're just doing basic cutting of like vinyl products, but also if you're creating a sticker, which I know I said earlier, the Cricut does not print and it doesn't. So I'll explain our first project. We're going to talk about how you might create a sticker with the Cricut, and I'll talk about how that would work. All right, let me delete one of these. We'll just keep one of our shapes here while we talk about our toolbar. So that is going to be up here at the very top. And we have our classic kind of undo and redo buttons. We do have the machine operation setting. So what are you planning on doing with this shape? If it was just a vinyl material that you're cutting, you're probably just going to be doing a basic cut. They do have also a wavy cut, or you can do more of a perforated cut. So depending on what your project is that you're working on is, you might change this. You might also want to be drawing this star using the pen feature. If that was the case, you would click on pen, it would change the operation to pen, and now it would show you kind of an outline because it would be drawing that pen for you instead of cutting it out of a material. And then we have other options for scoring, debossing, engraving, the print then cut feature, which is what we'll talk about with our first project, where we are going to create something that could be turned into a sticker. And then just this guide, which I actually am not sure what the guide is for. That is a recent one that popped up. I haven't used it before. So I'll have to look that up. I'm actually not sure what that is used for. I have personally used the Cricut for a lot of like vinyl cutting projects. So I am usually just on this basic cut operation here for the machine. All right, continuing to the right, we have the material color option, which again, I kind of already explained. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, but I'm going to skip on explaining more about that for now. There is also this either deselect or select all button. So if there were multiple images on here, selecting all would select all of them at the same time. There's also this edit button that has some typical edit features. So cut, copy, paste, duplicate, and delete. There's an align option, which we are going to use in, I believe, the last project that we're going to do together, where we can align some of our elements on the canvas. There's also a range. So I mentioned layers earlier. If you're familiar with any of the Adobe products, you might be a little familiar with how layers work. And you might have also seen it earlier when I had added another shape on here. Yeah, and this shape kind of shows up in front of the star. So this is working in layers. So basically this octagon is a layer on top of the star. If I wanted to be able to put the star on top of the octagon, I could come to this arrange button and then bring the star forward. And now it's going to be on the layer on top of the octagon. So that comes in handy and is helpful to know. And again, if you use any kind of Adobe or other maybe photo editing software, layers might be a familiar concept for you. Okay, moving further, we have this flip option, so we can flip things horizontally or vertically. There we go. Offset, this is going to be used with stickers, so I'll show you guys that with the first project. This create sticker button. And then warp, so you can warp in different ways. This is only available with Cricut Access though, so we won't be able to show that off today. This here is going to tell you the exact size of your design. It does have a little lock here in the middle that you can toggle off or to be unlocked. When it's toggled on, and if you click and drag to resize an element on your canvas, it's going to keep it proportional. If you unlock it, it's going to allow you to change the proportion. So make it like really skinny, drag it out this way, really arrange it however you would like. But if you want to keep something proportional while you're resizing it, then you would keep that lock button on and it's going to remain the same size. Wow. Well, it should be remaining the same size, but it should remain the same size. Interesting. I did notice earlier I do have a update ready to be installed, so that might be why that feature is not working. I didn't want to install it before class because I wasn't sure how long it was going to take. But that's what that does right there, is basically locks the aspect ratio or the proportions. We do also have the rotate option, so we can kind of very meticulously rotate our design if we are wanting to do that. And then this is showing you just the position of it on the canvas, which might be helpful if you have a certain sized material, depending on what mat you're using. Most mats are either going to be 12 by 12 inches, some are 12 by 24. So that is going to be, you'll want to keep that in mind when you're designing on here. Because if you place it, all the way down here, it's going to change where you're cutting it out of on your actual product at the end. All right, we're going to move down to, oh, and I do need to I should just keep this second one up here. There we go. So down here to this kind of second toolbar, it's found in the lower right-hand side here underneath the layers panel, and it has a couple more options for us. And we will play with some of these in our project today as well. But there is this slice tool, and I do really like if you hover over pretty much all of these here in Design Space, it's going to give you a quick little pop-up that tells you what each one does. So this slice tool is a tool that splits two overlapping layers or images into separate parts and will create a unique third object or shape. We will do this later, so that will make a little more sense, I think, when we do that. There's also this combine option, and it has some more options underneath it of welding. And so this is a tool that can join multiple layers into one shape. And then it has various other options like uniting, subtracting, intersecting, and excluding. And again, if you kind of hover over each of these, it's going to tell you what each of those options is going to do. Next is the attach button. So this is going to keep objects in place so that your design cuts exactly the way that it is arranged on the canvas. And then the flatten tool, which is what you can use to basically merge layers into a single printable layer or image. All right. There's also this contour one, which is currently grayed out, but it is a tool that can be used to hide or unhide cut lines in a selected layer. That one we're not going to use for today's class, so I'm not going to delve too much further into that tool. All right, so now that we've covered the edit bar, our toolbar, and kind of the very basics of just working here in Design Space, before we hop into the project for today, did we have any questions in the chat?
No questions right now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Megan. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete these shapes that I had laid down just to kind of show you guys some things. And again, if you're following along with the handout that was shared, this is going to start on page 5 of the handout, talking about uploading images into Design Space. So I'm going to come down here to this upload button that is on our design kind of panel down here. You'll see some recent uploads, but I'm going to go ahead and click this green upload image button right here. And this is the very first project. This is the one that we're going to turn into and act like we might be using it to create a sticker, which is a lot of fun. So you can either drag a file in if you have your browser window open, or you can select browse, which is what I will do. And I'm going to go ahead and use this image of a bulldog that I found earlier that I thought was really cute and would make a really good sticker. And so you can see here a little preview of the image. Just a quick note, the compatible file types you can upload are going to be the JPEG, a PNG, a GIF, SVG, DXF, HEIC, and BMP. So do make sure whatever you're uploading here is one of those compatible file types. And now that we have it here, we're going to go ahead and click Continue down here at the bottom right. And that is going to take us to the background remover. So if I was going to turn this into a sticker, I most likely don't want it to be a sticker that's this kind of rectangular shape. I might just want it to be, the shape around the bulldog. So we need to remove the background. So Cricut gives us some options and some tools that we can use to do that. So down here underneath manual, which the automatic is really cool actually, but you do need to have access to Cricut Access in order to use it. And it does a very good job at completely removing like this white background. But if you don't have access to that, then we have the manual options. So there is still this kind of magic little wand tool that you can use. And so as long as it's selected, you're going to come over here and then click on spots. And sometimes it takes just a little bit of time. It was taking a little time earlier when I was practicing. Come on. There we go. And that actually did a pretty good job of removing that white background. Now you can see we have this checkered background, and so that's all going to be transparent. The only spots it didn't really get is right underneath here, where the dog is laying down. You can still see some of that white bit. So if you didn't want that to be in your final sticker product, what you could do is you could use this erase tool. And you can change the size of the eraser. Right now, 20 is quite small. That's going to take a lot of time. You can make it much bigger, and you can come in here and actually erase away parts of the image that you don't want to be included. And so this is something that could become quite a project. It could be, honestly, take quite a bit of time depending on how detailed you want to be with it. So I'm definitely not going to take away all of this today, but just showing you that you can come in here and manually remove anything that you don't want to be part of your final product. We can also restore. So let's say I accidentally, let's do this. Let's say I accidentally erased part of this poor doggy's paw and I need it back. We can use the restore option, and I'm going to come back in here with the brush and we can restore it back to our image here. Okay, there's also the option up here though. We do still have the undo and redo options. So I'm going to click that just a few times. There we go. And I'm going to say that I'm actually okay with having this little bit of floor underneath the bulldog on my sticker. So I'm going to leave it as is. Up here, there is this preview single layer toggle button. So if you click that, that's going to show you exactly what of this image is basically going to end up on our canvas when we click apply and continue. And you can see here that when I used that magic select wand, it kind of removed a bit of the paw here on the dog, which I don't want. So I'm actually going to use this restore button to restore those little bits of the paw, which again is kind of a meticulous little detail, but I wouldn't have caught that if I didn't use this preview single layer because it was hard to see in just the image. But now I can zoom back out and toggle that off and then be assured that the entirety of that dog's paw is going to be in our final product. Okay, so once you have it as detailed as you would like, you've removed all of the background that you don't want in your final product, then we come down here to this apply and continue button in the lower right-hand part of the window, which I will go ahead and click. It's going to take just a second. And then it's going to give us a couple different options. I won't talk about this first one because, again, you have to have Cricut Access to do this multiple layers feature. But there is a single layer feature, which is what you'll use if you were just going to cut this simply onto material, which it would just look like that. So no one would be able to tell it was a dog if you were just cutting this into a piece of like vinyl or a piece of felt. So this image would really not work for single layer cutting projects. But if you were going to be opting to create like a sticker out of it, that is when you would want to use this flat graphic, because this is going to create a single layer full color image that we can use for print then cut projects. And a note with that, again, since the Cricut does not actually print itself, it will not print this image of the dog, you do have to have access to a printer in which we're going to first print this on our material, and then the Cricut will cut it out for us. So we're going to go ahead and select flat graphic and then press continue. And it's going to take just a moment here. Okay, so then we get to this screen where I can go ahead and rename the image if I would like. Again, depending on how much you're doing with design space, organize and filter things however you would like. I'm just going to leave it as the image name, which was class underscore bulldog. You can also enter in keywords that will help you search your Cricut catalog later. If you're creating a lot of stickers, it might be helpful to tag it with what kinds of stickers it is, and that way you can easily search for things later in your collection. I'm just going to leave all of that as is, and we're going to go ahead and press upload. And then wait just a moment. And we can see, ooh, it's really big. So let's go ahead and find the edge of this, and we're going to make this dog a little smaller because this would be much bigger. We can see it's 33 inches wide, which is quite large and way too big to be a sticker. So I'm going to just keep dragging the edges of this box until we get to, that's still a pretty big sticker, honestly, 8 inches wide. We can also, if you know exactly how big you want it to be, we can change it up here. So maybe I just need it to be 5 inches wide. I just want it to maybe go on the cover of a planner or something like that. And because we had that little lock button on, it kept it proportional and adjusted its height so that it didn't end up all wonky here. So if you were going to be turning this into a sticker, what you might do is add an offset. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the offset option. And actually, let me move this dog before I do that. Oh, now it's thinking. Okay, well, it's going to think it's going to add an offset here in a second. And what that basically does, you're going to see it's going to have kind of an outline. Okay, there we go. So let me do it again. Offset, it's going to add an outline around this image here. And so often, like when you buy a sticker, you'll notice it's not cut directly to the image. There's sometimes that kind of like white outline to it. And so that's what this offset is going to do, is going to add kind of some space around the sticker if you wanted there to be some space around the sticker. You've got rounded corners you can do, or you can change it to this more edge-like option, which is going to give you really sharp edges. We'll take a moment, let that do its thing, and you can see here it looks very sharp going around the outline. I don't like the look of that, so we're going to move it back to the curved. And it takes just a second to do all of these things. But this is just how you get kind of that like bubble-like effect around your sticker. And then if you wanted to adjust how much room is between the edge of your sticker image and then this kind of bubble outline, you can adjust the distance as well. So we'll bump it up just a little bit so you can see what that might look like. Or you can make it really thin and really tight if you'd like. And again, it takes just a moment here. While we're waiting on that, did we have any questions so far?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and this is taking a little longer than I thought it would take. I'm going to keep waiting though, because I wanted to show you guys once we're ready what it would look like when I click make, which since I'm not attached to a Cricut, we're not going to be able to go through the full process. But I want to show you, especially if you're planning on doing stickers with the Cricut, what your next steps are going to look like. It's really thinking about it tonight. Okay, there we go. That took a little while, but hopefully you saw that kind of very small change that it makes. I had only bumped it up by a quarter of an inch there, if that. But that's how you can kind of adjust that there. And of course, I made the rookie mistake of not clicking apply. So I didn't click apply, so it didn't actually apply that to the image. So let's wait just another second here. I clicked off on the canvas and then it assumed I didn't want to do that offset feature. Hopefully this one doesn't take as long. Sorry, guys. We'll wait for this. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and just click apply now. And now we can see we have that kind of bubble effect around. Now, I will say for the print then cut that we are doing with this, since it's going to be printing from our home printer, this offset bit would print in gray if we didn't change it. So let's say I want to change it to maybe this like bluish purple, we could do that. There's also this advanced where you can, drag and find a very specific color if you would like. So whatever color you put in here in this offset area is going to print out that color on your home printer. So I'm going to leave it with this kind of fun color to print around our little dog here. And then what we are going to do is go ahead and click Make. And then once we do that, it's going to take us to the Make page, which we're not going to be able to get very far. Oh, actually cancel real quick. So what I forgot to do when we did the offset here, it created a second layer. And what we need to do to ensure that this prints and then cuts together is we need to go ahead and flatten them together. So I'm going to go ahead and press Shift on my keyboard and then click Class Bulldog along with this offset layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and flatten it together. And then you'll notice that it is now flattened together. And we should be able to, when I click Make, it should be the same. There we go. Now it's together, and this is how it is actually going to print. So this is going to be just a standard 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So you would go ahead and load, if you're making a sticker, probably sticker paper into your printer at home, and then press Continue. And it's going to tell you that the first thing you want to do is send it to the printer. So if I click send to printer, it's going to give us options. It's going to tell you it's adding sensor marks. And this is so after you print it on your printer at home and you then go to run it through the Cricut machine, the machine is going to read these little sensor marks so it knows where to cut around your sticker here. So that's just what this is telling us there. And then it's going to give you the option to find a local printer and print it on like an inkjet or a color printer that you have access to. So we can see here a couple options that I have for a printer now. I would send it to the printer, print it out on my normal printer. And then the next step, which I'm not going to do because I'm not connected to a machine, is I would come here after I have printed it and it would then take us to the cutting portion of where it's going to be cutting it actually on the Cricut machine. So that would be creating stickers with the Cricut. I'm going to go ahead and press cancel. And yes, I want to cancel the cut. We're not actually going to go ahead and create this sticker today. But that was project number 1. I'm going to go ahead and delete that little dog there. And now we're going to talk about single layer cutting. So this is something that you typically do with just one material. So whether that's like a piece of vinyl or a piece of felt, or maybe something even a little thicker like leather. What we're actually going to do now is design just a basic name tag. So if you're following along with the handout, this is going to be page 7 of the handout, and we're going to create maybe like a little luggage name tag. So we're first going to come back over here to our design panel and click on images. And then in here, what we first want to do is go ahead and filter it down to just free images that we can use so that we're not finding something we really like and then realize that we have to pay $6 to use it. So we're going to use the filter button and filter it down to our free options. And once we have done that, I'm going to type in the search bar dog and press enter. Or if you like another animal, you can search for another animal, but I'm going to choose this little dog right here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just because I'm hoping you guys can see this well enough on your screens. All right, and now that we have our dog here and it's on our canvas, what we are going to do is actually resize this to a width of 4.5 inches. And we're going to do that directly in our edit bar up here. So instead of dragging it, I'm going to put 4.5 into the width up here. And that's going to automatically adjust the height to through this 3.669 inches. And now that I have this dog kind of the size that I want it to be, I want to go ahead and add my name to it. Let's say I want to use this for my luggage and I want it to have my name on it. I'm going to come back to this design panel over here and click on text. And that is going to give us the option to create some text. And you'll notice that this has actually popped up some text features here that were not available before. So this gives us font options, style options for our font, so bold, italic, font size, letter spacing, line spacing, alignment, curve, and then some more advanced options for our text. So we're going to go ahead and actually look at what fonts are available to us. So when we click on font, it's going to bring up our font options over here on the left-hand side. We have the option to look at Cricut fonts, which some of these are going to be paid for. So I had some filters on there, but you'll notice again, there are some things you can pay for fonts on Cricut, or if you have Cricut Access, you might have access to them for free. System, which is going to be any font that you already have on your system, or for example, if you have downloaded a font, that will be available on here as well. Recent is going to be any font that you have recently used. And then if you have favorite fonts, you can bookmark them so that they're right down here with this little button is how you would bookmark it. And you'd easily be able to come over, and this is basically like a favorites of your fonts. We're going to stick with just the Cricut fonts though. And I'm again going to come back to the filter and filter it to be free fonts, but also single layer cutting fonts because I know I am doing a single layer cutting for this. And let's go back and see what our options are. And we've got quite a few options, so feel free to choose whichever you like. I'm going to go ahead and choose this and lie extra bold. And then I am going to go ahead and type my name in. And then once I have typed my name, we are going to resize the text to, actually, I don't think we need to resize the text. That fits pretty well there. This is where this material color option comes in handy though, because the shape we pulled on was pretty dark and now my text is pretty dark. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this to white. Again, knowing this is not going to affect my final product because we're just cutting a material. We're not doing print then cut. This is just so I can see things better here on Design Space. But we're going to go ahead and, yeah, kind of center it like that. That looks pretty good to me. And now what we're going to do is press select all up here in the edit bar, and that's going to select both of the shape and the text as well. And now down here from our toolbar that's underneath our layer panel, we're going to go ahead and click slice. And now once we've done that, basically what it has done is where the text was on top of the shape, it has sliced through the shape. So we're going to delete these first two slice results. And you'll see what I mean here. So let me delete that and then delete that. And now I have just one image. We have just one layer and it kind of cut my name out of this shape that was there. So before it was text that was layered on top of the shape, and that wouldn't actually cut on the Cricut, but now it would cut this shape around and it would also cut my name out of the middle here. So we just have the one image of the dog with the name cut out of it. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add, because I mentioned I wanted this to be a luggage tag. So I need somewhere where I can actually, tie it on to my luggage. So I'm going to go ahead and find a little circle underneath our shape option. So circle is right down here. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. That is a very large circle. We need to resize that. So I'm going to use the sizing option up here in the bar and resize it to 0.25 by 0.25. And then I'm also going to change it to white real quickly. And then move it on over to the tail. and place it not too close to the top because we want it to be able to cut and still have a decent amount of thickness here because we don't want whatever we're tying around it to, end up ripping through the tail. And leave it right there. And now we're going to do the same thing that we just did with the text slicing. So we're going to select all, which I wanted to show you another way. If you don't want to click the select all button, you can also click and drag. And now we have selected everything. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the text of clicking on this slice button. And then we're going to go ahead and delete those first two slice results. And now we're left with just one shape that is going to be cut, where it's going to cut out the shape of the dog, and then my name from the middle, and our little circle here that we can hang this luggage tag by as well. All right, and so that would be creating like a luggage tag. And this is the point where we would go ahead and click on this make button. But again, since I'm not attached to a Cricut, it's not going to let us get very far. But you would tell it that you're cutting it on a mat, what size mat you're using. So either that 12 by 12 or a 12 by 24. You'd press confirm. And then this is going to be where you can drag it around. If you only had maybe a 8 by 7 piece of material you were cutting on, you would want to make sure it's placed where you're going to be placing the material down. You'd be able to press continue, which this is where we're going to get hung up because I'm not connected to a machine. But this is where it would then tell you and guide you through actually starting the cut on your Cricut machine. So I'm going to go ahead and press cancel here. And yes, I want to make sure to cancel the cut. And we're going to move on to our last project for the evening, which is going to be making like a basic mountain water bottle name sticker. And this is a sticker that is going to be cut out of a single layer. So not a print then cut where like we did with the very first one of creating that bulldog sticker. This would just be a very simple one you would cut out of probably some kind of sticky vinyl um, instead of an image that we're printing and then cutting. So we're going to go ahead and select our shape option again, and we're going to create a triangle. And we actually want to use 3 triangles. So I'm going to move this a little more to the center of my canvas, just because I like to work in the center of the canvas more than up at the top. And then use this little button here to duplicate that triangle 2 more times. And then we now have 3 triangles. What I want to do is align all of these. So the bottom edge of all of them are aligned together. So I'm going to select all up here in the edit bar again. And now that align feature opens up for us. So I'm going to click on align and then say align bottom. And you'll notice that moved it to where the bottom of all of those triangles are now perfectly aligned and the tops are also perfectly aligned. Now we're going to go ahead and make this look kind of like a mountain range, which is typically not perfect like this. So we're going to go ahead and click on this middle triangle. And I'm going to drag up on it until we are at 2 inches by 2.5 inches. So dragging, or just about 2.5 inches. So 2.51, that works for me. So now we've got a kind of taller peak in the middle there. And now we're going to go ahead and select the 3rd triangle, or this one over to the right. And for this one, I'm going to actually change it using the sizing options up here in the edit bar, just to show you a different way to change the size, even though we have changed the size of other things using this during today's class. We're going to pop up here to change it, and we're going to change this to 2 by 1.5. Okay, and so that's kind of made it a little smaller. You'll notice when we change the size up here, though, it did not keep our alignment. And what I'm actually going to do real quickly, because I'm realizing it's kind of hard to see all of these shapes since they're black right now, is say select all, and we're going to change that material color to kind of a lighter gray. That way you can see the outlines of all of these shapes. Now it's a little easier to work with my triangles. And so you can see the bottom edge of this triangle is now above the bottom edge of those 2 triangles. So I'm just going to go ahead and click align again and align the bottom. So now they're all aligned here at the bottom. But we can see this 3rd triangle kind of disappears into this middle triangle. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the left and right arrows on my keyboard to move it over so the peak is kind of poking out. And this doesn't have to be exact. I'm just going to kind of place it right there. That looks pretty good to me. And then I'm going to keep this one on the left the same size. I'm just going to move it out a little bit. And again, I'm just using my left arrow on my keyboard to move that out. So that looks like a pretty good mountain range to me. But if we were to go and make this right now, it would be reading all three of these as three different shapes. And I want to read it as one shape. So we need to go ahead and combine and merge these layers. So I'm going to go ahead and select all, which again, I used up here in the edit bar, that select all option. And now down here, I'm going to come to our combine option, and we are going to select unite. And what this is going to do is combine these all together to create a new single editable layer. And so now we can see that took away the outlines of those triangles that we were seeing. And this is now one layer that can move together like this. And we are also going to go ahead and come back down here to combine and click merge layers. And what this does is it's kind of an extra step to ensure that when we do go further into our project and actually get it cut out, that there aren't any issues with basically cutting this out on our final material. So it was kind of a two-step process there, but we did come down to combine and click to unite, and then combine and merge again. Okay, and since I am putting this on a water bottle, I want to go ahead and add my name again. So I'm going to click text down here and type my name in. And I'm going to change this right now to white, just so I can see it better on the background of the gray mountain that I have. And that's a little big for me. I don't want it to take up so much of the mountain. So I'm going to just click and drag until my name is a more reasonable size there. And what I want to do now is use the align option to ensure that my name is aligned perfectly in the center of this image. So I'm going to select all and then click align. And we're going to go ahead and center it horizontally. And you'll see that move my name over. And now it is aligned just in the center of our little mountain here. All right, and now that we have that all selected, we're going to do just like we did with the luggage tag. We're going to select all, and then I'm going to choose this slice option. And then we're going to delete these first two slice results so that we are left with just our one layer single image that has my name cut out of it. And this is what we would now be able to go ahead and press make and then load our material on the Cricut mat and send through the Cricut to be cut. All right. And again, I showed you guys earlier with the other ones. I'm not going to go ahead and do it now because we can't make it all the way through, but this is when you'd click that green make button. All right, so that is going to be the end of the projects for today. On the handout, you'll see it has a few more steps, and that is if you were going to actually go ahead and cut any of this out on the Cricut. So since we don't have access to the Cricut today, that's where I'm going to stop following the handout and actually pop back to our PowerPoint. And we are going to talk about some project examples, and then we'll move on to some library resources before we end the class in just a few moments. Before I talk a little more about these project examples, did anybody have any questions about what we did in Design Space today?
No questions right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this is just a couple examples of, I believe actually staff members have made these. So these are just, we talked about creating stickers today with the Cricut, about doing just simple vinyl cutting, but you can also do really cool things like creating these little cards. So this is all stuff that has been cut out from the Cricut and has been made into a card. or these really cool flowers. So all of these petals were cut out by the Cricut and then it was arranged together. And those are just a couple examples. There are truly so many different things you can do with the Cricut machine. These are just a few examples to really get you thinking about what is possible. So I do want to thank everybody for joining us today for Cricut Design Basics, and I wanted to share a few online resources. So Megan is going to go ahead and drop some links into the chat for y'all. I did want to first mention that we have our library programming calendar. So we do have programs for all ages. So please take a moment to look through there and see if there are any that interest you. I do want to mention we have a Cricut machine overview scheduled for this fall. It is a little bit later. It's going to be on Sunday, November 9th at 2 p.m. at the Haggard Library. And we'll have a staff member that will give an in-person overview of the actual Cricut machine itself. So if you aren't able to make it into our DCS before then and want to actually see a Cricut machine and get a little more familiar with it, that would be a really great program for you to go to. And then we have a ton of online resources. So we mentioned earlier we have LinkedIn Learning and Udemy that you have access to with your library card. But here's a couple additional resources. So there is Cricut Design Space Learn, which this is directly through Cricut. And this is actually going to take you to their YouTube channel where you can follow along with Cricut created YouTube tutorials. There's this really great Craft with Sarah blog. She has a lot of really cool design space kind of mini micro tutorials that will take you through creating different things with the Cricut. And that's very similar to this Hey, Let's Make Stuff blog as well. They have lots of different tutorials for different things you might want to do with your Cricut machine. And then there's also the Cricut Help Center. So you can search help articles, see if there's other tutorials available directly from Cricut as well. And then I'm also going to have Megan drop the links to some books in our catalog if you wanted to place them on hold. These are all books that we have available that you can check out. Some might be checked out right now, so you might have to put them on hold. Some might be available. You can come in and pick them up tomorrow if you're really ready to go. But just a couple of different books available from the library if you really wanted to delve into some of the projects that you can accomplish with the Cricut machine. All right, and I will give just a little bit of space for if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we will close the class in just a few moments. And thank you guys again for joining us today. And just a reminder, the recording of this will be up on our YouTube in just a few days for you guys to follow along again if you needed to. All right, and if we have no questions, then we're going to go ahead and close the Zoom session. And thank you guys for joining us today.